What is up, winning team, and welcome to part 10, if you can imagine, of this series I'm doing called The Misogyny in Religion, all based off of a conversation that took place between 8 women who came out from religious cults, who had discussions about a bunch of things. Check out the intro video in the playlist in the description box for all the info. Let's get into it. We're going to go into the prompt now of ways in which women prop up their communities and or families. This got so juicy straight away because I did not expect what was coming next. Okay, so let's talk about this. So one lady spoke up from Mormonism and she gave her exact story. So I thought it would be good to have her story in here to have an actual physical example of how some of the things we've been discussing in this series played out. First things first, she said that her dad has 3 wives. She has 32 siblings in total. That's insane. Her mother had 10 children. This is the kicker. Her mother also paid all the bills. Women in her form of Mormon extremism cult thing that she was in will be back at work within a week of having their babies so they can pay their husband's rent. You know what? For how many times in videos I have said, men are my favorite of all of God's creations. Men are my favorite of all of God's creations. I have never been so tested on that statement like this series. And it gets better. It gets better. The children also have to provide financially as minors. And the women still have to do all the wifely duties. So what are you going to do right at this point? What are the men doing? Populating in diddly squat is what they're doing. I'm sure it probably is a lot of hard work if you've got, he's got 3 wives. That's what they're doing in this faction. I can't remember how she specified her faction of Mormonism where they do this. He's doing diddly squat. So I honestly, when I hear stories like this, it actually genuinely breaks my heart. Because I know that it breaks my heart because the thing with all of this is you're actually taking advantage of well-meaning people. Like, this is what I keep saying. It's like, why are we taking advantage of well-meaning people? The fact that these women are even there, they're even doing it, they're even not leaving. A lot of them, they leave really late. So one of the ladies, she wasn't in Mormonism actually. They end up going through this, having all these 10 kids. They're scared to leave because of what they have to do. And imagine going through this. You're expected to have a baby every year. You're expected to go back to work within a week. You're paying your husband rent. Your kids who are underage have to also pay him rent. Meanwhile, he's just, having children than everybody else? And somehow we're doing all of this to get into heaven. So you can continue to be eternally pregnant and populate your planet with your sister wives. My goodness. Yeah. And it's interesting because on the contrary, and this is where it got even interesting. So basically, again, she was just highlighting again that the cult plays on the isolation of women in the outside worldly communities, which again is true. There is isolation of women in the worldly communities. It is true. There isn't a village. At least I can't believe I didn't mention this until right now. So one of the guys I used to work with, because I wasn't hired in his company, I was more contracted, I guess. I used to work as an event planner for him, and he was one of the most aggressive. He is the hands down the most aggressive negotiator I ever dealt with, working. And the thing is, in terms of what he wants to do, I really respected him, right? It's just that when it came to money, he was ruthless and he was aggressive about it, right? but he was very much also a man of the community at the same time. I just think, if as much as he could squeeze, as much as he could avoid paying, he would avoid, is the long and short of it. Now, me and him used to get into all these really interesting conversations because he'd always be like, because he wasn't a Christian. He had been in church and stuff. And we even went to visit one of these churches that got really famous for something. I've been to a lot of these things, you guys. Oh gosh, I'm not going to get into it because there's a whole church where the pastor's known to be like hella rich, and like all the hood guys go there, and like the church is like 70% like people straight from the hood, like people would be like bringing like their big huge machetes and like guns and things onto the altar like after they'd hear this guy preach, and this guy was filthy freaking rich. And then but like 30%, like the first 30% of the church was all like doctors, lawyers and people, and they would give all this money. And so this church is called SPAC Nation, and then I ended up, oh my gosh, I've got stories to tell because oh my giddy aunt, because I ended up getting to know one of the guys from that church who ended up in prison. And I got to know him, and it turns out he ended up being a really famous rapper that got really famously known. So his whole story was all this, and then he bumped into me because like, I've seen you before. I was like, where have you seen me? He's like, I saw you at the prison. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do you remember where I am? It's crazy. Anyway, so this guy, he where was I going with this? He the guy who run the company that we visited that church together. That's what I'm saying, because we used to do that. Because like, yes, you're a Christian, let's go. Like, so we went to the Christian thing. To the church, and we always used to have these debates because his vision, right, and what he wanted to create, because he was all about the village mentality, right? What he wanted to create essentially is he wanted to have multiple wives, right? And I never said he shouldn't. We just always used to go back and forth about it and just discuss. It was like an ongoing conversation. I never said he shouldn't. I was just always curious to figure out how he wanted to have this happen, because basically his vision was he wanted to have like he wanted to have like his village. So everything he was building, what he was doing was towards this village. He was eventually going to buy he's working on buying some land somewhere, because they also had an orphanage, they have an orphanage also somewhere else. I mean, he does really good work. But anyway, he wanted to have all these different wives, so that the idea was that each of them is designated a job for all the kids, right? So he wanted one of them to what was it? He was like, he wanted one of them, and he was dead honestly serious. And I think he'll make it happen. I'm gonna check back, because I reckon he's already I already know that he's I reckon he'll make it happen. I reckon he'll do it. I reckon he's got the power to convince these whatever. There's a reality in, okay, let's just not even. Anyway, so he'd be like, one wife is going to cook for everyone, one wife is going to do all of the this chores, the other wife is going to do all the homeschooling, the other wife is going to do this, so that I can focus on building the community and the village, and I can have all these kids to and it was just really funny. Like I just find these situations interesting. The reason I'm bringing up this story now is because I'm thinking to myself, this is where I always think, when it comes down to this whole story of the Mormonism thing. I should have left this thing alone. Okay, we're leaving it alone. This whole story of the Mormonism thing is making me think how I'm always thinking of what are the logistics? Like, what are the logistics and who's doing what? Because at least in this guy that I knew, his version of events, it's because he felt like he was going to have so many things to do, and he also wanted to have so many children, that it made sense that they would all have different roles to do with the kids, and then the kids would also have a lot of people to play with, etc., etc. So I kind of understood where it was coming from, right? I'm not saying I'm for or against it per se. You know what I'm saying? And we used to talk about things like, scriptures in the Bible, talking about this stuff, because the Bible says that, like, and then marriage is one man and one woman, and he's like, yeah, but technically, because he would be like, technically, every single one of my various marriages is, each of them is me with one woman and me one man. But at least with that, I understood his logistics, you know what I mean? And logistically, it kind of made sense, like, after all the very many conversations we had over time about the situation. Whereas with some of this stuff, I'm a bit like, and you're doing nothing, so why are we here? Like, you know what I mean? You're not even contributing to to the, like, all you're literally contributing is, let's not be too crude here. Anyway, on the contrary, in Islam, because the man does everything, and this is how it's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you got a womb. If you got a womb, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's how it does feel a lot of the time. I'm not going to lie. I'll be so for real. It does feel like that sometimes. On the contrary, in Islam, because the man does everything and the woman just has to have kids and build a home, which again, just has to have kids and build a home also is kind of like just. Building a home and having kids is again something even women now do devalue. Like the number of stay-at-home mums that I know who like are seen to be doing nothing according to other women. Other women who are having these jobs and whatever look down upon stay-at-home mums. And I just think that is so overwhelmingly rude. Because it's like, this is what I'm saying. I want to know what the adult, when is the adult population going to choose the narrative? Is having kids like one of the hardest jobs ever, or isn't it? Because when people are staying at home and building a home and looking after whatever, looking after everybody, it's like, oh, you're doing nothing. But then when I'm critiquing the adult population for their attitude towards children, it's like, oh, you don't understand being parents is so hard. So which one is it? Like, make your mind up. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's not what this video is about. But anyways, the manipulation on this end is that, well, because the man is there to provide for everything and you're not supposed to work for nothing and you're just supposed to whatever. And then everything is being taken care of. So what do you have to complain about? So that's the other side. On the one hand, when we were talking about the Mormons just a second ago, it was all you do everything. You have a baby every year. Every single year you have a baby. 1 week after your baby, you better get back to work. Kids, get to work as soon as you can. Got to pay your husband the rent. Got to pay the money for the house. And you got to do the work of looking after the kids in the home and everything. And then, you know why? Because daddy has to daddy. He has to populate. I can't with this. But on the flip side, if you're in Islam, if you're Muslim, guess what? Life's good for you. Don't matter if I can have 10 wives as well, because I can. Well, max 4. Max 4. Just clarify, max 4. But why do you care? Because I got to provide for everything anyway. All you have to do is look after the kids. And bro, if you're having loads of kids as well, let's not forget that they were getting close to the classroom side. Some of us are used to having to deal with the classroom. That's not easy work. Okay? Anyway, like a small classroom. Anyway, so that's there. And then the ladies touched on a really interesting point. Which is that fundamentalism is always attractive in times of chaos. So they started to talk about how, you know, the trends that like coming from there, where they've come from, they've started to notice some trends like the trad wife trend, all these things, and how, you know, when the world is in chaos, going back to simple living seems really attractive. And then one lady said something that I found extremely fascinating. Hear this. It was easier to be a single mom than a trad wife in the Christian patriarchy. Oh my giddy aunt, and I actually believe her. Because I feel, because she started to talk about how the expectations, and then she started to talk about the Proverbs 31 woman. And you know what? She had some points, because she started to say how, like, the Proverbs 31 woman, obviously we've done Proverbs, right? And, you know, this is always the thing in church, it's like, this is my journey to becoming a Proverbs 31 woman, right? I actually understood what she was saying, because it's like she wakes up at sunrise and she's working from sunrise until sunset. She looks after her family and she works. She does do a lot. I can't lie. The Proverbs 31 woman does a lot. And now the way that she put it, I would agree that it sounds like she's doing too much, to be fair. I have to acknowledge that. What I will say is, again, I'm going to have to reread that now to see if I can get a different type of interpretation. Because the thing about me is that I always take the Bible, like, I always feel like, again, this is like I was saying about the, I don't want to comment. What I'll just comment for now is the way she described it and how it came across to her, I fully understood where she was coming from. And I think I'll just leave it at that because it is doing a lot. And it does open the door for some of these like Mormonism things. Because like if she's working and she's working and she's up at sunrise and all the way at sunrise and goes and stops at sunset and is doing everything for her family and is working as well and is doing all these things. I kind of get where this lady's coming from, and it kind of is the type of thing that I'm sure these Mormons from the previous story, because this lady who just mentioned that, she's from the extreme fundamentalist Christianity. So yeah, it's very interesting, all this stuff. Like I honestly, I feel like I have so much respect for these women because bruh, they've really been through it, like, and they've actually been through it. Yeah, so I think we'll leave that there and then we'll move on. I can't believe we're going to be on part 11, but yeah, I'll see you guys in part 11. We're going to be talking about, for the people who were in this all your life, did you ever clock the misogyny early on? Did you clock the injustices towards women? Was it just a part of your reality? When you noticed, did it start to want you to get out? So if you had been there from the beginning, when did you start to see there was something sus going on? This is actually a really interesting conversation as well. So I'll catch you guys in part 3. Because if life's a game, it's played to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.